following program, Norml Show Live, is intended for responsible adults only. We advocate for the repeal of marijuana prohibition for adults. We discuss the science, culture, and controversy about America's marijuana laws. We do not advocate or encourage any illegal activity and advise all listeners to learn their state and federal marijuana laws by visiting norml.org, Norml.org. Opinions and claims made by guests and advertisers of Norml Show Live are their own and do not necessarily reflect the philosophy and policies of Norml. Listener discretion is advised.
You take a seed, you plant it, you grow it, you dry it, you roll it, you smoke it. You take a seed, you plant it, you grow it, you dry it, you roll it, you smoke it, and it goes down smooth. Hey!
Spanning the continent to bring you the truth about cannabis and marijuana law reform.
I smoke pot and I like it a lot.
From the promise of legalization.
And I think we need to rethink and decriminalize our marijuana laws.
To the agony of prohibition.
One major responsibility is to encourage people to use less drugs.
The National Organization for the Reform of Marijuana Laws presents Norml Show Live, Marijuana Nation. Now, here's your host, Norml's Outreach Coordinator, Radical Russ Belville.
Good afternoon, tokers and tokettes, and welcome. It is Monday, January 16th, 2012, and it's got to be 420 somewhere in the world. It's also Martin Luther King Jr. Day here, and normally we would have the day off here at Roller J Studios in Portland, Oregon, but I decided that we would work today, primarily because I have a couple of interviews that are time sensitive. They've got to be done pretty soon here, especially the one from coming up at the bottom of the hour. We'll be speaking with Ken Wolski from the Coalition for Medical Marijuana, New Jersey, and I believe Chris Goldstein will be joining us on the call as well. And they've got an important action alert going out for tomorrow morning, a protest, a hearing or something that they need to tell us all about for tomorrow morning. So it was crucial that we put on a show today to be able to get that alert out. Also, at half past the hour, we've got another interview, very crucial, kind of time sensitive. We've got a couple weeks on this one, but Robert Platshorn, the Black Tuna, America's longest-serving nonviolent marijuana prisoner, will be joining us to talk about the Norml Senior Tour. That's our outreach we're doing for senior citizens. But before we get to all of that, let's introduce everybody that we've got here on the show, bringing this show to you. Of course, from our virtual studio in Grastoria, Oregon, we've got the lovely Cannabis Carrie.
Hello, the snowy Astoria today.
Oh, it's all snowy, huh?
Astoria. Yeah, very snowy out here. It's gorgeous.
We got a little bit of flakes coming down here, but they're refusing to stick. So Carrie brings us our hemp headlines right after the first break. What do we have for headlines today?
Well, today we're going to talk about two subjects that come up a lot. We're going to talk about DUID laws and how where they consider marijuana and the nanograms per blood content. We'll talk a lot about that. And also we're going to talk about K2. That's another subject that gets brought up a lot. We get a lot of discussion when we talk about. So I have two stories about those two very important issues. All
right. We'll get right to that. And also joining us here in the studio, we have Wiz Kaliko hanging out on camera too. How you doing?
Good, man. Glad to be here.
Yeah. Hope you had a good weekend.
Yeah, not as rough as yours.
I've had better weekends, but we're not going to talk about that because I want to be happy. Also joining us on camera 3, we got Brian hanging out there in the end of the studio. How you doing, Brian?
I'm here, Russ.
Oh, there we go. Got to get your mic on. Try that again. Hello. There you are.
Still the wrong mic.
Oh, well, we'll find that eventually. Maybe it's that one. It'll be there somewhere. We'll find it later. But also on the show, it's Roots Monday, so I've got some more reefer jazz for you. We're going to go back into the archives to 1935 and a song. This one's from Willie Bryant and his orchestra. It's called A Viper's Moan. All of that. Plus, I've got videos for you in Hour 2 and my own I Have a Dream speech in Hour 2. Stay tuned. It's Norml Show Live.
You're listening to Norml Show Live, the voice of the marijuana nation.
Weedmaps.com. I'm Radical Russ from Norml. In my job as outreach coordinator, I travel every month, and when I'm on the road, I need a fast, accurate way to find the medical marijuana dispensaries in the area. So I turn to Weedmaps.com. Weedmaps.com has the best dispensary locator online or on your mobile device. Search by zip code or let Weedmaps find you, and in seconds you'll have the addresses, phone numbers, and customer service reviews for the medical marijuana dispensaries in the local area. Weedmaps.com also has a section devoted to helping you find a doctor who understands and recommends medical marijuana under your state's law. You can even check prices on the Medical Marijuana Stock Exchange. Coming soon, you'll even be able to find the listings of Norml attorneys and chapters, local head shops and grow shops, and the best weed-friendly businesses. Weedmaps.com has the information you need to be an informed cannabis consumer. Visit Weedmaps.com today, a proud sponsor of the Norml Network.
Hey, this is John Papa. You're listening to the Norml Show Live.
Hi, I'm Radical Russ. One of the best things about marijuana is the wonderful aroma. But when you travel a lot like I do, that aroma becomes a suspicious smell. That's why I endorse Stealth-Products.com, the leaders in smell-proof containers. From smell-proof vacuum bags to smell-proof backpacks and duffel bags, all the way to smell-proof digital safes, Stealth-Products.com has you covered. Stealth-Products.com brings you safe, secure, odorless layers of protection with activated carbon fiber. Backpacks and duffel bags are simple black so as not to attract attention with a logo or flashy design. Now, nothing is perfectly odor controlled from the detection of drug dogs, but with proper vigilance, containers from Stealth-Products.com will help you avoid nosy humans.
You're now listening to Illit Beats.
Stealth-Products.com. Stealth-Products.com.
Medical marijuana, industrial hemp, consumer cannabis. It's time for this week's Norml News with Cannabis Carrie.
The proven dangerous chemical compound of synthetic marijuana that is sprayed on potpourri and marketed as a legal drug has been outlawed in many states, and much of that legislation passed in 2011. Some forms of synthetic marijuana is now outlawed in 38 states. That drug that was created due to a limit on research allowed on actual marijuana has made thousands sicken nationwide after consuming the substance sold in smoke shops and truck stops, and also led to a few deaths. It is sold by the grams with a label on it warning that it is not for human consumption. And the latest data from the National Institute on Drug Abuse says that synthetic marijuana is now the number 2 most frequently used illicit substance among high school seniors, behind actual marijuana. The adverse effects reported to hospitals after smoking synthetic marijuana could be seizures, vomiting, anxiety, and an accelerated heart rate. A handful of deaths have been linked to the substance. But the problem with the law is that it can't keep up with the science. The state of Virginia made it illegal to sell or possess 10 different compounds that were marketed as a synthetic drug. But one of the largest busts in the nation was in Virginia, where they confiscated over $1 million worth of the product that was packaged and ready for sale. But after testing the product, it turns out that it didn't contain one of the banned products listed in state law. Authorities in other states that have gone through the arduous task of outlawing these products have had similar stories. Cases in states where spice and K2 are illegal have also confiscated products that have outpaced the laws. Authorities in Florida, Indiana, Illinois, and Alaska have all confiscated legal products that they thought they had banned. Savvy spice manufacturers now have been altering their recipes enough to skirt the state bans and marketing the latest generations of chemicals as more potent than the original formulas. Websites are also openly marketing the new formulas, letting those in restricted states know that the new formulas are legal for about $10 to $25 a gram. Now, to those that fought to get the products off the market, it's really frustrating to see that they're still there. And in the case in Virginia, where almost 2,000 packets of spice was seized at a tobacco shop near a school in a raid-style fashion, is set to go to court next month. But now that those samples have been tested to show only non-restrictive active ingredients, prosecutors aren't saying whether they will go forward with that case.
You know, this kind of illustrates the insanity that comes from trying to ban a plant in the first place. Why do we ban marijuana in the first place? Well, people might smoke it. And, all right. Well, what happens when they smoke it? Well, they get high. Well, they get high. We got to stop them from getting high. It gives them a high. We can't have people getting high. We've got to stop that. So when we try to stop that, try to stop this natural way of achieving this so-called high, chemists find unnatural ways to achieve this so-called high that aren't banned. We start with the JWHs, you know, the JWH 018 and 073, the two synthetic cannabinoids that had to be invented in the first place because scientists couldn't get real cannabinoids to work with in the first place, right? That's the only reason they exist anyway, is so that we can have something to test our endocannabinoid systems with, when we're testing rats and such, because we can't get real cannabis because it's so deadly dangerous. Someone might get high on it. It's got to be Schedule 1. And then they put those on spice, they put those on K2, all sorts of terrible potpourris. You don't know how much is on there, what's on there, what else is on there, and what the stuff that you're spraying it on is in the first place. And people are taking that. They call it gas station weed, fake weed, synthetic pot, whatever. So they take that to achieve that high. Now, from what I've read, now I've never tried this K2 stuff. I can get the real thing. But from what I've read on this K2, it's kind of a hit and miss kind of thing. Sometimes people get high off it. Sometimes it's the worst kind of bad trip they could ever have, heart palpitations and stuff. Dangerous stuff to be messing around with, throwing the dice as to what kind of high you're going to get. But that's the extent people have gone to because, well, they can't go back and get the plant because, gosh, it could get you high. So the lawmakers, they see these people getting high off the K2 and the spice and the other resultant ill effects from it, since it is this unnatural synthetic chemical. And they say, well, we got to ban JWH 018 and JWH 073. Not realizing that JWH, John W. Huffman, the guy who made these synthetic cannabinoids, made hundreds of them. I mean, you should get the clue from 018 and 073. 3 digits kind of signifies that we might get into the 999 range with these different synthetic cannabinoids. Tweak a molecule here, tweak an atom there, and it's just no longer illegal. It no longer falls under that specific state statute that bans this specific chemical. And to that, the DEA and the drug warriors want to come up with broader definitions of schedules, broader definitions of drugs that say, well, if it mimics the effects, if it's like, now we're not even banning it based on its chemical constituency, we're banning it on the effect that it has on people. We're getting right to the root of the problem here. It gets you high, and we just can't have you getting high. Well, of course, unless you have a prescription for Prozac or Ambien or like to drink alcohol.
Now, Colorado has some of the most active marijuana activists in the nation, but they are also up against some of the most active proponents of positive marijuana law reforms as well. Colorado State Senator Steve King announced that he is working on a proposal that would make it easier for law enforcement to convict people of driving while high. Colorado has been down this DUID proposal before. It is a sticking point of many in law enforcement in the case for legalization. Called a per se limit, law enforcement insists that they need a tool that could identify cannabis-impaired drivers in a similar fashion to the .08 blood alcohol limit from drunk driving. The blood alcohol limit is a powerful weapon in helping law enforcement get drunk driving charges to stick. A driver does not have much of a legal challenge of their impairment in a courtroom if their blood alcohol limit is over that .08 legal definition. The Republican senator from Grand Junction said it is time to make people deal with the consequences of making the bad decision to drive high and put people's lives at risk. Senator King is not quite sure yet if he will include the 5 nanogram limit that was included in a similar bill that failed last year. The Colorado legislature considered a bill last year that would have made anyone testing over the 5 nanograms of THC per milliliter of blood to be found as driving intoxicated and face all the criminal penalties associated with drunk driving. But the limit was debated and the research was just not conclusive enough to agree that everyone is impaired at that level. But instead of raising the limit to try to get this bill passed, Senator King is considering including a zero tolerance policy in his proposal. He said that under such a scenario, drivers who had any amount of THC would be driving under the influence. He told the Denver Post on Friday, quote, "If you have THC on board, you have to make a decision. I have to call a cab. I have to rely on public transportation. At the forefront of that is the protection and safety of the traveling public of Colorado. Driving is not a right, it is a privilege," unquote. Now, the issue has been studied and debated before in Colorado. A zero-limit tolerance level may be an even harder bill to get passed. After the failure of last year's bill, lawmakers had the Colorado Commission on Criminal and Juvenile Justice study the issue to help them clarify the science behind the THC driving limit. Not even the commissioners, armed with all the scientific data brought up in the debate and tasked with the goal of just making a recommendation, could reach a consensus. So no recommendation was made.
Yeah, and we've gone off on these DUID laws before, but first of all, I got to call BS on this legislator who's trying to say that his main imperative here is protecting people with, roadway safety. I call BS on that because you're not calling for zero tolerance for alcohol. You still accept a .08 blood alcohol content, which means that below .08, you might be okay to drive. Now, we do know people can get DUIs even at .01 if they determine that that was enough to make you drive impaired, but they actually have to prove that you're impaired. Now, we can debate the .08 alcohol limit, but there is some pretty good science that shows that above .08, a vast majority of the people are going to be far too impaired to risk driving, right? That we can show that there's a dose-dependent relationship. Yeah, it varies whether you're a little 98-pound woman or you're a 300-pound guy. And yeah, it varies a little, depending on whether you're an alcoholic or an occasional drinker. But by and large, for the most part, above .08, you really shouldn't be driving. The unfortunate thing is, and it's revealed in the opening sentence Carrie had in the story there, is how the .08 is how they make the charges stick. It's kind of hard to prove impairment in some cases when the cop just thinks you're impaired but can't actually show that you weren't able to walk the white line, you were driving erratically, but he thinks you're impaired. It's hard to make those charges stick when he just thinks you're impaired and can't prove it. So he has this nice handy device, this nice little thing you blow into that proves it for him, makes his job a lot easier. And while, again, the science on alcohol is fairly conclusive on this, the science on THC is absolutely not. There is not a dose-dependent, reliable mechanism, measurement that we can go with that says, yes, the vast majority of people at this level will be impaired. It just doesn't exist. And furthermore, it seems to me like a solution in search of a problem. It's not as if we're all up in arms about how many marijuana wrecks there are out on the roadways today. It's really something that doesn't seem to be that much of a problem. Yeah, they'll bring up studies that say, oh, well, so many fatal drivers had THC in their system. All that shows you is that there's a lot of people out there that smoke pot because THC stays in your system for a very long time. Let's not be putting more zero tolerance laws on the books. Let's go back to checking out the science. And hey, I have an idea. How about we make cops do their job and actually prove someone's impaired before we start taking their driver's license?
And we only report on marijuana busts when they're really, really big, when they're really, really silly, when they're sort of interesting, or like in these cases, when they involve the very young or the very old, which I guess by definition is ageism, but here goes anyway. In Illinois, a 74-year-old Oklahoma man is facing felony marijuana trafficking and delivery charges after a traffic stop in Troy, Illinois. A state trooper pulled over the man for improper lane usage on Interstate 55, and after searching his vehicle, officers found 3 bundles of marijuana inside a stack of plywood. When they were removed and weighed, the 74-year-old man was charged with possession of 77 pounds of marijuana. He's currently being held on a $250,000 bail and is being held in a Madison County jail. What a bummer.
Oh, yeah. We all feel safer now that this 74-year-old menace to society is off the streets, carting around a bag of weed and the plywood and the lumber back in the back of his truck. Yeah, we're all a lot safer now because we know how these 74-year-old drug dealers, like to prey on the children and hang out at the schoolyards and make sure they get addicted and turn them on to heroin. And how ridiculous is this? How many more times are we going to have to do stories of septuagenarians, octogenarians, nonagenarians being arrested, old people being sentenced here for cases of what is most likely medical use of cannabis? I mean, come on. I've always been a strong proponent that when you get your AARP card, that ought to be your medical marijuana card in any state. You get above the age of 50, congratulations, you get medical marijuana. We got an age for, 18 for tobacco, 21 for alcohol, 25 for the House of Representatives, 30 for the Senate, 35 for president. What else you got to look forward to? Let's just do that. You turn 50, medical marijuana is legal. Everybody above the age of 50 can have medical marijuana. Can we agree on that? Maybe and stop harassing people who've gone there in the twilight of their years. They've raised their kids, they've had their careers, they're retiring. They just want to settle down with a nice bag of weed and relax. I mean, good Lord. How long must this go on? It's just insane. Oh, Carrie, thank you for the news. Appreciate that. And while we still have a minute left, I did want to make a note about, of course, being Martin Luther King Day. And I mentioned in hour 2, I've got a little speech I've prepared called I Have a Dream Too. And we will, not two like a sequel, but TOO like also. I wouldn't dare to be so presumptuous, just a little presumptuous. But we'll get to that in hour 2. But I did want to make mention of a column by Dylan Ratigan. He's the host of MSNBC's Dylan Ratigan Show. He's got a great column up today to celebrate the Martin Luther King Jr. Day. Roscoe, settle down. Settle down, boy. Down, Roscoe. Down. But he's got a column up there today. The war on drugs is nothing but institutionalized racism. You really got to take a look at it. He makes note of a few statistics that I've made note of many times. Since 1971, there's been 40 million arrests for drug-related offenses. And even though blacks and whites use drugs at the same rates, blacks are 10 times more likely to be incarcerated. There are more blacks under correctional control today than there were enslaved in 1850, a decade before the Civil War began. We'll look at more of those statistics in our MLK Day show back after this. Gentlemen, it's time for a break.
Let's get on it, man.
All right, let me see. One of these mics got to work for somebody out there.
I can't find it.
Back in a minute.
It's 20 after the hour, and we have to take a short break, if you know what I mean. Please support these sponsors who support Norml Show Live.
Oh, have you ever met that funny reefer man? A reefer man. Have you ever met that funny reefer man? A reefer man. If he said he swam to China, he would sell you South Carolina. Then you know you're talking to that reefer man.
The law offices of Omar Figueroa would like to remind you to stand up for your rights. Please do not give up your precious liberties. There's nothing wrong with standing up for our constitutional rights, and in fact, it's the only way to honor the Constitution that recognizes our natural rights. Treat law enforcement with respect and respect the Constitution by standing up for your rights. If you are detained or arrested, stand up for your rights by repeating, I respectfully invoke all my legal and constitutional rights. I do not consent to any search and seizure. I want to remain silent, and I want to speak to my attorney, Omar Figueroa. Omar Figueroa has more than a decade of experience in federal and California courts and graduated from Yale University, Stanford Law School, and Trial Lawyers College. Please contact the law offices of Omar Figueroa at 415-489-0420 or 707-829-0215 or on the web at www.omarfigueroa.com.
It's not a very pleasant story, but he died, he choked on, the official explanation was he choked on vomit.
It was actually someone else's vomit. It's not,
exactly.
You know, there's no real...
Well, they can't prove whose vomit it was. They don't have facilities in Scotland Yard to print.
You can't really dust for vomit.
Legalize it. Don't criticize.
This is Peter Tosh for Norml, the National Organization for the Reform of Marijuana Laws. Did you know that more than 400,000 Americans were arrested last year for the possession of marijuana? People are being sentenced to up to 40 years for even standing beside a joint. Well, I think it is definitely time for you to help doing something towards this. To find out what you can do, just write Norml, N-O-R-M-L, 2317, M like in Marijuana Street. That's 2317 M Street, Washington, D.C., 20037. Help Norml to help protect your rights.
I'm Norml Outreach Coordinator Russ Belville. Some things have changed since the 1970s when Peter Tosh first recorded this ad for Norml, and not just our address from M Street to 2 blocks up on K Street in Washington, D.C. Today, more than twice as many marijuana smokers are arrested, over 850,000 per year. With polls for the first time showing a majority in America supporting marijuana legalization, we can finally realize Peter Tosh's dream and truly legalize it. But we need your help. Send your donations to Norml, N-O-R-M-L, 1600 K Street Northwest, mezzanine level, Washington, D.C., 20006. Or just log on to norml.org and click Donate Now for a secure and easy way to donate online. Thank you.
So you got to legalize it. And don't criticize it.
It's time for your daily Toker Tunes, the best in 420 friendly music from all genres that uplifts, entertains, and informs the public. Today we bring you tunes for Roots Monday, our celebration of the music that evolved into the popular modern music of today. We pick the best of blues, country, folk, and jazz with a 420 feel and serve it up for you every Monday. If you'd like to submit your song to be played on Norml Show Live, send it to us at stash@norml.org. Now here's some more great independent marijuana music for today's Daily Toker Tune.
All right, folks, as you know, on Mondays we like to dip into the reefer jazz sometimes here, and today is no exception. We're going to go back to the 1930s. This song's from 1935, and it's by Willie Bryant. He was born in 1908. He was a band leader, vocalist, and disc jockey, born in New Orleans, Louisiana. Now, he grew up in Chicago and took trumpet lessons, but wasn't much of a trumpet player. His first job in entertainment was dancing in the Whitman Sisters show in 1926. He worked in various vaudeville productions for the next several years, and in 1934, he appeared in the show Chocolate Review with Bessie Smith. In 1934, he put together his first big band, which at times included Teddy Wilson, Cozy Cole, Johnny Russell, Benny Carter, Ben Webster, Eddie Durham, Ram Ramirez, and Taft Jordan. They recorded 6 times between 1935 and 1938, and Bryant sings on 18 of the 26 sides recorded, including this one from 1935, one of their first recordings. It's a tune called A Viper's Moan, and of course, those of you who are familiar with the hepcat lingo of the reefer jazz era, a viper was a toker, a pot smoker, because of the viper-like sound they would make when they were smoking a reefer. So light up the gauge and get ready with your muggles. It's time for your Roots Monday Daily Toker Tune. Willie Bryant and Orchestra with A Viper's Moan.
A Viper's Moan. I want all y'all to get together and swing me out, because I feel the spirit. Bring it to me.
What makes something funny? How does humor impact health and psychological well-being? How can you incorporate humor into everyday life? A concise, reader-friendly introduction to an important but often underappreciated topic in modern psychology, Humor 101 explains the role of comedy, jokes, and wit in the sciences and discusses why they are so important to understand. Psychology professor Dr. Mitch Earlywine draws from his personal experiences in stand-up comedy to focus on how humor can regulate emotion, reduce anxiety, and diffuse tense situations, expose pretensions, build personal relationships, and much more. He irreverently debunks the pseudoscience on the topic of humor and leaves readers not only funnier, but better informed. It's part of the Psych 101 series from Springer Publishing, Humor 101 by Dr. Mitch Earlywine, Ph.D.
Remember, friends, there's more to life than marijuana. I just can't remember what it is. Why'd I come in here?
And now, a message from former President George W. Bush to remind the American people of our responsibility in our nation's war on certain American citizens using non-pharmaceutical, non-alcoholic, tobacco-free drugs.
One major responsibility is to encourage people to use less drugs.
That's right, America. Use less drugs. Put down the Prozac, the Vioxx, and the Levitra, and turn to the herb. Use less drugs. Our national policy is no longer just say no. It's now just slow down.
You get me too high. I overanalyze. If you've ever been too high, then you can sympathize. You get me too high. And I start to fly if I said some silly thing, and that's the reason why.
Norml, unlike any other marijuana or drug reform organization, is built from the ground up by grassroots activists. We are the Marijuana Smokers Lobby, and we aren't just anti-prohibition, we're pro-marijuana. Every week, we take some time to talk to the citizens of local Norml chapters across the country and around the world, as well as others who are working to make a difference in the fight to end adult marijuana prohibition. In this segment, we call Grassroots Activism.
All right, I'm really pleased to have our next guest with us. He's known as the Black Tuna. He's the author of the Black Tuna Diaries. He's one of the stars of the documentary film Square Grouper, and one of America's best, if not the best, at first original pitchman, Robert Platshorn. Welcome back to the show.
Russ, always a pleasure, and nice to know I'm a grassroots guy.
You are a grassroots guy, absolutely. And, like the people that don't know your story, I mean, Robert Platshorn was busted in the late 70s and did 29 years in prison. And if anybody would be motivated to want to change our marijuana laws, I would imagine it would be you.
Well, when I first came out of prison, and that's when we first met about 3.5 years ago,
Yep.
That was probably the last thing on my mind was becoming an activist. I wanted to sell my book and make a living and go fishing.
What made you want to be an activist then?
Well, that first time I left home after I got out of prison, I came to San Francisco for the Norml conference. And I met one patient after another who showed me the real value of medical marijuana. After 30 years in prison, I knew that there was such a thing, but I really had no idea the depth and the uses for it. And when I saw MS sufferers who could get up out of a wheelchair and walk around the show for a couple of hours, I knew I had to be part of something. Mm-hmm. And, of course, I always had a drive to see that no one else went to prison for the kind of time I did. And today they're still sending people to prison. But it's changed a lot, and we've made a lot of progress. I realized when that first year we were all in Seattle for HempFest, and I was up on that stage and talking to 2,000, just cheering people, sending me love. And I looked out and I said, but I'm preaching to the choir. These guys are sold. If I'm going to do something, I've got to go outside of the activist community. And I've got to find an audience that I can reach at my age and with what little facilities and income that I had. And when I saw the results of Prop 19 in California, that night you and I were talking on the radio, and we were all trying to push as hard as we could to get one state legalized. The exit polls told me that it was seniors who really killed it.
Mm-hmm.
You can forget all the arguments and all the disagreements between the growers and the dispensaries, because it was seniors who went to the polls.
That's right.
That was a by-election. And some of the polls in California had a 90% senior turnout and only 10% general public. But nobody was talking to seniors.
Mm-hmm.
The only people who had a message for them was the beer lobby, who told them, you don't want those stoners on the road. And that was about it. And that's my generation. We invented marijuana as it's known today. We really did. And I knew it wasn't a hard sell, but they had voted 65% against in California, and I wanted to see that something like that never happened again. It took me about a year, and I put together a program for seniors, and it's been incredibly successful.
And this is the senior tour that we're talking about here, the silver tour, excuse me. And this is the, we want to encourage everyone to check out the website at thesilvertour.org. Tell us about it. Tell us about how you're reaching out.
We have put on several big shows, and we talk to audiences who are not activists. A show a couple of months ago was at Century Village, and it was a ladies' club. They didn't even know what they were coming to see, but 100 ladies showed up, all of them over 60, over 70, and they looked around at some of the displays we had put up, and they said, marijuana? Is that? And they made faces.
Yeah.
By the time that show was over, 92 out of the 100 came over, signed a petition, and were actually anxious to find out what they could do. And one of the typical things you heard was, yeah, but I don't have that much time. What can I do? Because I think this is a valuable medicine. And that's been the reaction to the Silver Tour shows. And the one coming up on January 29th is very, very special, and I'll tell you why. When I first became active, and I started to approach the people at Norml and some of the other organizations to help us out in Florida with a petition we were doing for medical marijuana, everybody had the same answer. Florida is hopeless. It would be a waste of money. We've got to put our money in the states where there's hope for accomplishing something. And, of course, they were right. That made a lot of sense to me, but I didn't believe Florida was hopeless. And so I helped build up the Norml chapter here. And one of the ladies in our chapter suggested we go to the legislative meetings and talk when we get a chance. It sounded like a long shot, and one of the girls from FAU called me and said, Bobby, I booked you in at the legislators meeting in West Palm. Please go and talk. You've got 3 minutes. I said, 3 minutes? Are you kidding? But I went, and I'm an old pitchman, and I went with one of Rosenfeld's tin cans that he gets his marijuana in from the federal government, and I held it up and shocked everybody because they didn't know it existed. And after 3 minutes of everybody with their head down on the desk, not wanting to look at me, as I walked out the door, Representative Jeff Clemens' assistant came up to me and said, please, Mr. Platshorn, Representative Clemens wants to put in a bill. Will you help us draw it up? I just lit up. And a couple months later, he put the bill in. It went into committee at the last session. Now we have a companion bill in the Senate in Florida. And we've got an organization called Florida Can, who are up in Jacksonville lobbying, Tallahassee rather. They've got a professional lobbyist, and they will all be watching for this show on January 29th. The Florida legislature will still be in session. In fact, Jeff Clemens, the rep who put in that first bill, who had the courage in a state like Florida to put in a bill, he's going to be talking at the Silver Tour show, along with Herb Rosenfeld, We have Mike Minardi, a terrific attorney. We've got Mary Lynn and Al Byrne from Patients Out of Time. And, you know, those are the only people in the country who are certified to give medical marijuana courses for doctors and nurses, and it's certified by the AMA. This is going to be a fabulous show. CNN said they're sending a crew in to cover it, local TV, and we're going to be streaming live the entire show. We've already had a dozen people say they're going to run screenings in their area, either for seniors at senior centers or in their home for friends who need the education. And it's got me really excited.
That is amazing. It's thesilvertour.org for more information. We're speaking with Robert Platshorn, who's the head of the Silver Tour and part of our senior outreach programs here with Norml. And we're also going to be holding a screening here on the Norml Network. It's Sunday, January 29th, 10:30 Pacific. That's 2:30 Eastern. And
1:30 Eastern.
1:30 Eastern. Oh, then I got my time wrong. Sorry there. 1:30 Eastern. Sorry about that. No, that's right. 10:30 Pacific is 1:30 Eastern. I just added another hour. That's my problem. Okay, but 1:30 Eastern, 10:30 Pacific, Sunday the 29th. And other than the Pro Bowl, and I think the Pro Bowl's later that day, there's no playoff games or anything else. So, you know, get educated on this. Get your mom and dad, get your grandma and grandpa, if that's who's available, and have them take a look at this and learn from people in their own generation that they have nothing to fear from the legalization of cannabis, and it would be a benefit to them. I mean, gosh, Robert, I think of my father, who's turning 70 this year, and he's on a handful of pills every day that I know most of those could be taken away if he was able to use medical cannabis.
I hear those stories every day, and I'd like to ask everybody to do me a big favor. If you're going to hold a screening and invite people, please send me a message. You can do it through Facebook or through the Silver Tour website, and let me know who you are, what city. I would like to put up a list for CNN and everybody else who's covering to show what kind of a reach that we have and what kind of solidarity we have all across the country.
Yeah, and you are right about the senior turnout on this as well, as far as the voting and the public perception of cannabis and the need to end prohibition. You know, if we do the math, I'd say one senior on our side might be worth 10 people my age. I mean, this is so important.
You know, no matter how resistant they are when we start one of our shows, in the end, you always hear, well, didn't you bring any samples?
Well, I think that falls into our purview over here. We'll take care of that, I guess. Oh, Robert Platshorn, I'm so happy to have you here on the show. TheSilverTour.org is where you get all the information for this Sunday, January 29th, 10:30 a.m. Pacific, 1:30 p.m. Eastern Time. You can get more information at TheSilverTour.org. And as far as you, as we let you go here, what's next for you after this show? Any events that people can see you at?
If this show is able to raise some more support, I want to get up to Tallahassee with one more show before the legislature goes down to make sure this gets pushed onto the floor. And I would like to make it a special show and make sure as many legislators as possible are there. That's sort of an emergency plan B. Plan A is in the spring to head out to California to back the initiative Tax and Regulate Like Wine. Judge Gray has spoken to me about it, and if we can raise the funds, I'm going to give it as much senior support as I can gather, and boy, that's important. And the same thing for Colorado. That legalization initiative is probably the best written one I've ever seen, and I would like to do everything possible to ensure that it passes. And you need seniors if you want votes.
That's right.
Nobody else reaching out to them.
That's right. And we've already got someone in our chat room, Chris in our chat room, who's saying he could help you in Tallahassee. So if you end up in Tallahassee, we'll get you guys hooked up with each other. And great volunteer. He helped us at the Norml conference last year, and he could be a big help for you out there.
I'd love his help, and he can reach me easily through Facebook or through the website, silvertour.org.
All right.
TheSilverTour.org.
TheSilverTour.org. Everyone check it out. Robert Platshorn, thanks for joining us again here on Norml Show Live.
Joy and a pleasure, and I will see you at the HE Cup in L.A.
All right, see you in L.A., my man. When we come back, we've got Ken Molsky and Chris Goldstein.
You're listening to Norml Show Live, the voice of the marijuana nation.
They just have something to say.
All of us can get a piece of that pie. And the reason we don't have headway is because that 1% can't figure out how they're going to make all the money.
They just have something to say.
Your Sunday morning and Wednesday evening pot and politics immediately following Danny Danko's Free Weed here on
The Libra Lounge.
This is Norml Show Live.
Just say no.
No matter what you call it, it's a huge part of popular culture.
Where'd you learn that, Cheech? Drug school.
You don't need weed school. You just need a copy of the new book, Pot Culture, the A to Z Guide to Stoner Language and Life.
Hey, this is great, man.
Even if you never smoked marijuana.
I never used marijuana. Sorry.
Don't think you smoked marijuana.
I experimented with marijuana a time or two and didn't inhale.
Or you used to smoke marijuana.
I inhaled frequently. That was the point.
Pot Culture by former High Times editor Steve Bloom and Shirley Halperin will answer every question you ever had about marijuana culture.
Has that marijuana made it back up here yet?
Check out Pot Culture, the A to Z Guide to Stoner Language and Life at Amazon.com or visit potculturebook.com today.
Too bad, man. I just stopped smoking yesterday.
Most people have nicknames for their friends, and marijuana must have a lot of pals, because she goes by many names. She's also known as Pop, Weed, Ganja, KGB, The Croosh, Hash's Cousin Mary, Bud, Jazz Plants, Lando Calrissian, Hemp, Grass, El Diablo de Verde. Doctor, fill my pipe up. Mr. T.H.C. Gary. The Portland Trailblazer. Sticky Icky Icky. Jean-Claude Van Amsterdam. My only real friend. Your Highness. Harry Potter. Henry VIII. Dank. Diggity dank dank. Diggity dank dank. Damn, that's some dank shit, man. Mother Nature's way of saying hi. Marijuana.
Legalization, decriminalization, lowest law enforcement priority, medical marijuana, ganja sacrament, consumer cannabis, industrial hemp. The world of marijuana law reform involves many different aspects of cannabis that interact nearly every public policy discussion in America, including healthcare, the economy, global climate change, law enforcement in prisons, immigration, religion, free speech, energy policy, and war. Now, we take a look at how re-legalizing marijuana will change the world in our Norml Show Live Cannabis Conversations.
All right, we move now to the state of New Jersey, which I have previously christened the No Garden State for their medical marijuana laws that don't allow home grow. But hey, half a loaf's better than none. We're still working to improve that law, and one of the activists working diligently to try to get the governor there and the legislature there to enact the law that the people actually passed is Ken Wolski from the Coalition for Medical Marijuana New Jersey, who joins us by telephone. Ken, how you doing?
I'm doing fine, Russ. Thanks so much for having me tonight.
All right, let's make sure that everyone knows about the protest that you've got going on, because this is pretty time sensitive.
Yes, exactly. It's Wednesday, January the 18th at 12 noon on the steps of the State House in Trenton, New Jersey. patients and activists and medical marijuana supporters are gathering to, express our really displeasure at how things are going here in New Jersey, because the law is not up and running after 2 years, Russ. 2 years after being signed into law, we still have, no effective program, no program at all, really.
Yeah, a law that in the text of the law, part of it was to help people with less than 12 months to live.
Yes, absolutely. That's one of the qualifying conditions. Anybody with a doctor's diagnosis of less than 1 year to live automatically qualifies for medical marijuana. And so we've seen thousands of these patients die already, Russ, in New Jersey without the kind of pain relief and quality of life improvement that marijuana can give to them.
And it's so insane because the law's been passed. It was signed by outgoing Governor Corzine, and then incoming Governor Christie doesn't particularly seem to like the law, regardless of what the legislature passed or the people support, and he's dragging his feet on implementing this. How much of this do you think owes to his, alleged presidential aspirations in 2016?
Well, I'm not sure about that, Russ. I'm not sure about his presidential aspirations, but he said when he first came on board in January of 2010. That he would not have signed this law. He was opposed to this law from the very beginning. Mm-hmm. So we've seen nothing but a series of delays and obstructions of the medical marijuana law for the last 2 years that he's been in office. And quite frankly, we don't expect to see any meaningful program while he's in office.
So for this protest that you're having on Wednesday, is there a specific action you're asking him to take, or a specific action he's taken that you're protesting, or is this in general just implement the damn law?
Well, in general, just implement the damn law for one thing. But we also want to present a series of amendments that we would suggest to this law. The restoration of home cultivation, recognizing out-of-state ID cards, restoring chronic pain for any reason as a qualifying condition, adding workplace and housing protections, and allowing insurance companies to pay for medical marijuana. Yeah. So these are the kind of most of these were in the original bill, actually, Russ, that was passed by the New Jersey Senate in February of 2009, and they were taken out of this bill in sort of some kind of backroom deal in the Assembly Health Committee in June of 2009, anyway. So we're asking for most of the good portions of this bill to be restored.
We're speaking with Ken Wolski from the Coalition for Medical Marijuana New Jersey. You can find out more information on their organization at cmmnj.org. I encourage you to take a look at that. And, Ken, the other thing about this, you mentioned the improvements you'd like to see, the law, protection for, say, transplants and employment and housing and child custody, et cetera, et cetera. It does go to show how one of the difficulties we face as reformers is, you get the medical marijuana law passed, and in the minds of a lot of just the general public that's not paying attention to it more than Snicky's new shoes, they think, oh, well, medical marijuana, we did that, it's over now. So how do you continue to fight and educate to get the general public to know that this hasn't gone far enough?
Well, we first of all, thank you for the plug for CMMNJ, and we're also available on Facebook at Friends of the Coalition for Medical Marijuana New Jersey. We probably keep that more up to date than even our website, although the blog section of our website is up to date. We try to educate the public about the benefits of medical marijuana. That's the mission of our organization, the Coalition for Medical Marijuana New Jersey, and I think we've been doing a good job. We've been getting an awful lot of good press. We've established ourselves as a very reliable source of information, and I think that really we're a more reliable source of information on marijuana than the federal government. So
I don't know that would be. Hate to damn you with faint praise, but I don't know if that's much to say compared to the federal government. But
anyway, the recent poll from Eagleton here in New Jersey showed that 86% of the voters in New Jersey were supportive of medical marijuana. No other issue has polled that high, Russ. Yeah. In New Jersey. So, yes, unfortunately, a lot of people do think that, now we passed the law, that's all there is to it. But we knew all along that, once you pass a law, that's just the first step in getting medical marijuana to patients. Then, of course, comes the regulatory process, the regulations that enact that law. Mm-hmm. We tried to get on at the table when those regulations were written, but all medical marijuana advocates were excluded from that by the Christie administration. So we came up with a very flawed set of regulations in addition to, to our other problems.
It seems like in government, everywhere you look in government, the industries, the governmental agencies that are in charge of regulating industries are just chock full of industry insiders, usually trying to make a buck some way through regulation.
Yeah.
Except medical marijuana. Except medical marijuana. We don't want to have any experts that know a thing about cultivation or health or science. Let's get cops in there and governors in there. It's such a shame.
Yeah, Chris Goldstein said, excluding medical marijuana advocates from the process was like trying to build a bridge without using bridge engineers. And I think that's really true.
And
they really have it. And, the funny thing is that Governor Christie signed an executive order number 2, that said that when executive agencies like the Department of Health develop these regulations, they should reach out to experts in the field. And yet we were excluded completely.
Yeah, that's the drug war exception to facts, reason, and logic. We've seen it in many different guises. We've reported many of Governor Christie's ideas for the medical marijuana industry as it would be out there with your dispensaries. I forget what word they're using out there. Care centers.
Alternative treatment centers.
Thank you. That's ATCs. Right. And of course in the law it was written to have 6, 2 in the north, 2 in the center, 2 in the south. Christie wanted to have 4 that sold and 2 that grew. We heard things of only having 3 strains, and they all had to be less than 10% THC. Can you give us an update on where that's at? Has any of those things changed?
Yes. Well, Governor Christie did try to, really illegally, we believe, amend the law when he said that there would only be 2 growing centers. First, he wanted Rutgers University to be the only center that grew marijuana in New Jersey, but Rutgers rejected that idea. Then he said, well, only 2 alternative treatment centers. And, that was clearly just an amendment to this amendment to the law through the regulatory process, which is not a proper use of his executive powers. So those 2 things were shot down, and he did go back to allowing the 6 alternative treatment centers that were called for in the law. And after a series of delays, we thought he awarded permits to the 6 alternative treatment centers. The Department of Health announced that they awarded permits in March of 2010, and yet March of 2011. But then later that year in September, they said, no, we didn't really award permits. We just approved their applications. No permits have been awarded. And then they instituted this 2-month-long vetting process for every employee and officer of each alternative treatment center, which is really more the most extensive. It's 70-some pages long that every employee has to fill out in order to pass the vetting process and be awarded a permit for these alternative treatment centers to open. So it's no wonder that these alternative treatment centers are having problems in the local communities when they go to local zoning boards and try to get approval there.
Yeah, no kidding. Well, Ken Wolski from Coalition of Medical Marijuana New Jersey. Let's remind everyone the protest is Wednesday, January 18th, this Wednesday at 12 noon Eastern at the State House steps in Trenton, New Jersey, asking for all medical marijuana patients, families, and advocates to please finally implement this law 2 years after it was passed. For more information, send me an email at stash@norml.org. We'll get you in touch with Ken if you want to get involved. Ken, thank you so much for joining us here on the show, and we'll talk to you again sometime.
Oh, thank you, Russ. It's been a pleasure.
And good luck with your protest.
Thank you. Thanks so much.
All right, folks. When we come back in hour 2, I have got my own I Have a Dream speech for you, as well as a couple of great videos that got through to me this weekend on email that I just have to share. Plus, we got Wiz Khalico, Cannabis Carey, and Brian the Red here in the studio taking your calls at 971-533-7111. For everyone here, I'm Radical Russ. Thanks for joining us. And until next time, take care of each other, tokers.
This is Norml Show Live, the voice of the marijuana nation.
Take it out one more time. You take a seed, you plant it, you grow it, you dry it, you roll it, you smoke it. You take a seed, you plant it, you